There's a moment in every seeker's journey when they realize all their prayers, all their words, all their affirmations were never the thing that moved the mountain. The real power wasn't in the asking, it was in the being. You see, most people pray from lack, hoping to convince God to intervene. But what if the divine was never out there deciding whether to answer you? What if it was you all along, deciding who you are willing to be? Neville Goddard taught that creation is finished. Every possibility already exists in imagination, waiting for you to claim it as yours. But as long as you keep asking, you're declaring, "I don't have it yet." The law of assumption prayer isn't about begging, it's about assuming the end and feeling it real. The moment you feel the wish fulfilled, you stop reaching and start resting. Because you know, it's strange, isn't it? The more we chase something, the further it seems to move away. Yet the instant we become the one who already has it, everything aligns. This is the paradox of manifestation, the secret Neville tried to show us again and again. When you stop asking and start being, the miracle happens not by effort, but by identity. So tonight, forget the idea of waiting for your prayer to be answered. The moment you stop asking, you stop declaring separation. The moment you start being, you step into the finished creation, where peace replaces striving and the invisible starts to move for you. Because in truth, you were never trying to get there. You were learning to realize you were already home. Most people pray the same way they breathe when they're afraid, short, desperate, and filled with tension. They don't realize that every please whispered into the dark carries within it the vibration of lack. Neville Goddard often said that to ask is to confess you do not yet have. And so, the more you ask, the more you affirm the distance between you and your answered prayer. It's not that God ignores you, it's that you keep speaking the language of separation. You pray for love, but speak from loneliness. You pray for abundance, but feel small when the bill arrives. The universe responds not to words, but to states of being. And as long as your inner state says, "I'm still waiting," the outer world has no choice but to echo that waiting back to you. Think about it. When a child asks for something and keeps repeating the same question, it's not faith, it's doubt disguised as devotion. The child doesn't trust that the parent heard, and that's exactly how we treat the divine. We keep knocking on a door that was never locked, forgetting that asking over and over again is proof that we still believe it's closed. True prayer, according to Neville, begins when asking ends. It starts when you shift from wanting to being, when your words quiet down and your inner feeling says, "It is done." The law of assumption prayer isn't about repetition, it's about identity. You don't try to convince God, you convince yourself that you already are what you desire to be. Imagine someone planting a seed and digging it up every day to check if it's growing. That's what most people do with their desires. They keep asking, keep checking, keep doubting. But the gardener who trusts the soil, waters the ground and walks away, knowing that growth is inevitable. The soil doesn't need to be begged, it needs to be believed in. So when you pray, notice where your energy comes from. Is it from fear or from faith? If you're still trying to make something happen, you're saying, "I don't have it yet." But if you rest in the quiet, knowing that it's already yours, you stop asking and start embodying. That's when prayer becomes creation, not request. This is where the power of the wish-fulfilled Neville method reveals itself. To feel it real is to stop chasing answers and start living from the end. You don't pray for rain, you bring an umbrella. You don't ask for healing, you begin to live as if you are already whole. That shift from desire to fulfillment is where miracles are born. Most of us were taught that asking repeatedly shows faith, but the truth is, faith doesn't beg, it rests. Faith doesn't plead, it knows. To constantly ask is to declare absence, but to be still and know is to declare fulfillment. And that stillness is not passive, it's powerful. It's the silence of someone who knows the harvest is coming, because it already exists in the unseen. In that silence, prayer stops being a performance and becomes a recognition. You recognize the divine as yourself, not something you chase, but something you express. And once that recognition dawns, asking feels unnecessary. You begin to see that every answered prayer wasn't a reward from heaven, but the echo of your own assumption. So the question isn't, how do I get what I want? But rather, who am I being when I pray? Because once you stop asking and start being, prayer turns into creation. And that's exactly where we'll go next. Into the truth that creation itself is already finished, waiting only for your assumption to bring it alive. Neville Goddard's most radical idea was also his simplest. Creation is finished. Every possibility you could ever imagine already exists. Not in the future, but right now in a higher dimension of consciousness. You're not trying to make something happen. You're selecting which version of reality you're willing to occupy. The miracle isn't waiting to be made. It's waiting to be recognized. It's like a radio signal. All the stations are broadcasting simultaneously, but you only hear the one you're tuned into. You're not creating the music. You're aligning with it. The same is true with the law of assumption. The moment you assume the end, you tune your consciousness to the frequency of fulfillment, and the 3D world simply mirrors that back to you in time. Most people believe manifestation is about doing, acting, visualizing, hustling. But Neville explained it differently. You're not building the bridge to your desire. You're walking across the bridge of states. When you feel it real, you step into the state of the wish fulfilled, and that inner reality begins to solidify outwardly. You're not waiting for the miracle. The miracle is waiting for you to notice it's already done. Think about how the sun rises every day without you asking. You don't make it happen. You align your day around it. In the same way, the moment you assume your desire as already real, your actions, emotions, and circumstances naturally align around that assumption. The work is not to create, but to consent, to say yes to what already exists in imagination. Imagine standing in a vast library with endless books representing different versions of your life. You're not here to write the book. You're here to choose which story you will live. When you assume the end, you're saying, "This is my story," and your world reorganizes itself accordingly. Every page, every event begins to echo that chosen state. Creation being finished means there is no waiting room between desire and fulfillment. The only delay is your identification with the old self, the version of you still doubting, still waiting, still asking. The instant you stop identifying with lack and start identifying with completion, the universe shifts to match your new frequency. That's why Neville emphasized imagination creates reality. Not imagination as wishful thinking, but imagination as the creative act of God within you. When you live in the end, you acknowledge that your imagination is the true source of all manifestation. What you assume to be true, with feeling, becomes your experience. So, instead of asking when your prayer will be answered, the better question is, which version of me am I assuming right now? Because if creation is finished, there's nothing more to make, only something to become aware of. Every moment you choose a new awareness, you choose a new world. And yet most people still fall into the same trap. They keep pleading for what they already possess in imagination, unknowingly pushing their own fulfillment further away. But we'll talk about that in the next part. The subtle mistake that keeps your miracle just out of reach. There's a quiet tragedy in most prayers. They come from the heart, yes, but also from a hidden disbelief. Every "please God" carries an unspoken confession. I don't have it yet. Neville Goddard warned that the more we repeat our request, the deeper we sink into the feeling of lack. And since feeling is the secret, that feeling, not the words, is what gets answered. It's like standing in front of a mirror, asking for your reflection to smile first. You can plead, cry, and wait all you want, but the mirror doesn't respond to begging, it responds to being. The outer world is that mirror. Every please you utter is the image of you without the thing, and the universe faithfully reflects that version of you, again and again. Many people mistake persistence for faith, but persistence born of fear is only a ritual of doubt. They repeat affirmations, prayers, and visualizations without ever entering the state of the wish fulfilled. It's like pressing the elevator button repeatedly, thinking it'll arrive faster. But it was already on its way the moment you pressed it once with belief. When Neville spoke of the law of assumption prayer, he didn't mean repeating words until you're exhausted. He meant assuming the state until it becomes your natural dwelling. True prayer is not words, but awareness. Not pleading, but possessing. To keep saying please is to keep reminding yourself that you are not yet what you desire to be. Imagine a person in love. They don't need to say, "Please let me be loved" every morning. They wake up already feeling loved. Their words, tone, and choices naturally express that state. The same applies to abundance, health, or peace. The moment you feel it real, your being speaks louder than any prayer ever could. The wish-fulfilled Neville method isn't about forcing emotion, it's about soft acceptance. It's whispering to yourself, "It is done," and resting there. That stillness is not indifference, it's divine assurance. It's the energy of someone who has already received and no longer feels the need to ask. That's the essence of living in the end. Each time you plead, you plant another seed of uncertainty. And just as no garden thrives on constant digging, your inner reality cannot blossom if you keep uprooting it with worry. The feeling of absence is the true barrier, not the lack of action. Asking keeps your focus on what's missing. Being keeps it on what's real. Neville often said, "You cannot serve two masters. You can't be both the one who has and the one who hopes." Every repetition of please reinforces the master of lack. Every moment of quiet knowing reinforces the master of fulfillment. Your reality will always obey the one you serve most consistently in feeling. So when you find yourself wanting to ask again, pause, breathe. Instead of saying please, say thank you. Gratitude speaks the language of completion. It tells the universe, I already received. That shift from plea to praise changes everything. Because the moment you stop speaking as a beggar, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start thinking as the creator, the one who already is what they seek. And that shift, subtle yet profound, is where we're headed next. There's a moment when the prayer changes tone, when you stop whispering into the dark and realize the voice you were hoping would answer was yours all along. That's the moment you stop speaking as a beggar and start thinking as a creator. Neville Goddard said that imagination creates reality, and that imagination is God in action. So if you are still pleading, you're talking to your own power as if it were distant. But when you assume the end, you are speaking as that power. To think as the creator is to remember who's truly in charge. A beggar looks around for evidence. A creator looks within for certainty. One lives by sight, the other by faith. And faith, as Neville taught, is loyalty to the unseen reality, the one already finished in imagination. When you live from that awareness, you stop chasing signs and start producing them. It's like the difference between a person staring at a thermostat, begging for warmth, and the one who simply adjusts the dial. The creator knows the power was never outside. You don't plead with the heater, you change the setting. Likewise, you don't plead with God, you shift your state of consciousness. That is how the law of assumption prayer truly works. To stop asking, start being is not arrogance, it's alignment. The beggar says, please give me. The creator says, thank you, it's done. One vibrates with absence, the other radiates with completion. And since creation is finished, the latter is always the truth. You're not waiting for God to move, you're allowing yourself to see that He already has. When you think as the creator, you naturally begin to embody the wish-fulfilled Neville method. You stop trying to control how or when it happens, and simply live from the reality that it already did. You become the answered prayer in motion. And as Neville often said, you don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. A powerful exercise is to imagine your desire as a coat. The beggar stands outside in the cold, asking someone to hand it over. The creator simply puts it on and feels warm. That feeling, the sensation of being clothed in fulfillment, is what bridges the invisible with the visible. That's the power of feeling it real, explained through experience, not theory. Notice, too, how your language changes when you shift states. The beggar says, I hope. The creator says, I know. The beggar prays to be healed. The creator gives thanks for health. Every word becomes a declaration of identity. And once identity changes, circumstances have no choice but to rearrange around it. This isn't about pretending or lying to yourself. It's about remembering. The I am within you is the eternal creator that never lacked anything. Every time you declare I am, you're setting creation in motion. When you say I am prosperous, creation aligns with that command. When you say I am still waiting, creation obeys that too. You are always answered by your own assumption. The beauty of thinking as the creator is the quiet confidence it brings. You don't need to prove anything, explain anything, or even defend your faith. You simply rest, knowing that your assumption is the seed and the world is its garden. And as you nurture it through feeling, it blossoms naturally in time. And when you finally begin to live this truth, to rest as the one who already is, something incredible happens in the stillness. You start to sense that peace is the new prayer, that silence is the new language. And from that stillness, a new kind of practice begins, one we'll explore next, the sacred art of feeling it real. This is where Neville's teaching becomes intimate, not theory but practice. Before you close your eyes at night, when the mind is soft and receptive, imagine one simple scene that would naturally occur if your desire were already fulfilled. Not the process of getting there, not the struggle, just the proof that it's done. It could be a friend congratulating you, the feeling of keys in your hand, or the quiet joy of waking up beside someone you love. Neville called this the law of assumption prayer in motion. The secret isn't in the complexity of the scene, but in its reality, how real it feels to you. When you feel it real, your subconscious accepts it as fact, and your outer world begins to rearrange to match that inner conviction. You're not visualizing to make something happen. You're entering the world where it already has. The best time to do this is before sleep, because the border between consciousness and the subconscious, what Neville called the state akin to sleep, is where imagination creates most powerfully. Your conscious mind quiets, and your deeper self becomes impressionable. That's when you plant the seed, and once the seed is planted, you don't dig it up with worry, you rest. Let's say you want financial freedom. Don't visualize stacks of money. Instead, imagine yourself paying a bill easily, or feeling relief after seeing your balance grow. Make it ordinary, because miracles often hide in ordinary moments. The simpler the scene, the more believable it feels. The more believable it feels, the more powerful it becomes. Feeling it real explained simply. The subconscious doesn't differentiate between what's imagined and what's experienced. It accepts the dominant feeling as truth. So if you go to sleep saturated in the feeling of "it is done," you wake up broadcasting that frequency, and life mirrors it back. That's what it means to live in the end. This practice is not about force or repetition, it's about gentle conviction. You don't strain to imagine, you surrender into it. You allow the feeling to wrap around you like a blanket, gratitude, relief, and quiet joy merging into one sacred thank you. That feeling is your signal to the universe, the wish fulfilled. Some people try to visualize during the day, but get distracted by the noise of life. That's okay, the moment before sleep is enough. Think of it like charging your spiritual battery. Once you feel it real at night, your day naturally flows from that vibration. You'll notice coincidences, intuitive nudges, and small bridges of incidents leading you exactly where you need to go. The beauty of this practice is that it trains you to rest in identity, not in effort. You begin to notice that the real power isn't in doing, but in being. Each night you die to the old self, the one who wanted, hoped, and asked, and awaken as the one who has. That's resurrection through imagination. It might feel subtle at first, like a whisper, not a shout. But over time, your new inner state becomes your default. You no longer need to try to believe. Belief becomes your natural resting place. You find yourself calmer, lighter, and more certain without knowing why. That's the seed sprouting beneath the soil. And in that calm certainty, you'll start to notice something beautiful, a feeling language emerging, a new way of knowing beyond words. Gratitude, peace, and relief become your proof. They tell you that your inner shift has already occurred, and that feeling and that sacred vibration is what we'll explore next. Neville Goddard often said, "Feeling is the secret," and those words carry more power than 1,000 affirmations. Because feeling is not emotion, it's identity. It's the quiet inner knowing that says, "I am this." When you truly assume the end, gratitude flows naturally, not because you received something, but because you realized you already had it. That's the moment you stop desiring and start possessing. We've been taught to chase results, to measure progress in numbers, signs, or confirmations. But in Neville's teachings, the only true sign is feeling. Gratitude is the vibration of completion. Relief is the exhale that follows answered prayer. Peace is the stillness that comes when you no longer question whether it's happening, because you know it already has. Think about the difference between a person waiting for good news and one who's already received it. The first is restless, the second is calm. The first checks the phone every minute, the second smiles, knowing the message has arrived. That's the energetic difference between asking and being. And life responds to your dominant vibration, not your words, but your feeling. In the language of the law of assumption prayer, feeling is your communication with God. Words can lie, but feelings never do. You can say, "I have faith," yet deep down tremble with doubt. And the universe listens to that. But when you truly rest in gratitude and relief, your vibration declares, "It is done." That's when creation responds. Neville's wish-fulfilled method always returns to this principle. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, because once the feeling is real, everything else rearranges. Circumstances, people, timing, all bend around your inner state. It's not magic, it's law. You no longer chase outcomes, outcomes chase you. And here's the paradox. You don't force gratitude, you discover it. The moment you stop struggling, and surrender to the knowing that creation is finished, gratitude naturally arises. You're thankful not for what's coming, but for what already exists in imagination. That's how you cross from desiring to possessing without moving an inch. You'll notice subtle signs when this shift happens. You breathe differently. You sleep peacefully. The same situations that once triggered worry now evoke trust. These aren't coincidences. They're proof that your inner state has changed. The outer world will soon echo it, but the true miracle already occurred within. Peace in Neville's language is divine evidence. It's God's whisper saying, "You've arrived." When you live in the end, your heart becomes quiet. You no longer need constant reassurance because the very need to ask dissolves. The silence inside you becomes louder than the noise outside. That's when being replaces begging. So the next time you pray, don't look for fireworks. Look for peace. That's the sign. That's the language of being. Because the one who feels it real doesn't demand proof. They radiate certainty. They become a magnet for all that matches their inner world. And yet, even after this realization, the world will test you. Appearances will tempt you to doubt, to ask again, to look outside for validation. But as you'll see next, even those illusions serve a purpose, to remind you that the 3D world is just an echo, patiently waiting for your unwavering being to align it back into harmony. Here lies one of Neville Goddard's most profound truths. The 3D world is not the cause, it's the shadow. It's the echo of who you've already been in imagination. When you look at circumstances and feel tempted to ask again, you're reacting to your own past assumptions. You're trying to rewrite an echo. But echoes fade not by chasing them, but by maintaining silence, by holding the new vibration until it's all that remains. Imagine shouting your name across a canyon. You hear it come back a few seconds later. That echo isn't new. It's simply the reflection of what you already sent out. The same happens with your reality. Every bill, argument, or delay is just a reverberation of an old state. When you understand that, you stop fighting the echo and instead adjust the voice that created it. Neville called this persistence in assumption, the ability to stay faithful to the unseen, even when the visible contradicts it. This is the heart of the law of assumption prayer. You don't beg for the echo to change. You persist in being the one who already has. You stand firm in the wish fulfilled, knowing that time itself will bow to your conviction. Most people lose their miracles because they react too soon. They see one unfavorable event and assume it's not working. But the universe doesn't fail. It's just finishing the rearrangement. The 3D world lags behind the invisible by a little while. So when you stay centered in being, you give creation time to catch up to your assumption. It's like planting a seed and then declaring the soil dead because nothing sprouted overnight. The delay is not denial, it's gestation. The moment you feel it real, the roots start forming beneath the surface. The 3D world might still look barren, but life is already moving beneath your awareness. Faith is the patience to know this. This is why Neville urged his students to live in the end, even when appearances scream the opposite. If you feel poor, feel abundance anyway. If you feel lonely, rest in the feeling of love fulfilled. The echo may mock you at first, but soon it harmonizes with the new sound. That's how reality bends, through persistence, not panic. And when doubt arises, and it will, remind yourself, this is just the old echo. Say it gently, smile at it, refuse to react. Every time you remain unmoved, you weaken the old vibration and strengthen the new one. Persistence, not intensity, is what wins the game. Neville used to say, "Do not concern yourself with how it will come about." That's the work of the echo, not the origin. Your only task is to sustain the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Every time you re-enter that feeling, you rewrite the cause, and the echo must follow. It's law. Think of your imagination as the movie projector, and your reality as the screen. When something on the screen displeases you, you don't attack the screen, you change the film. The wise understand this. The impatient argue with shadows. Be the one who edits the reel, not the one who complains about the projection. And soon as you persist in this quiet knowing, something subtle shifts. The outer world begins to mirror the inner truth. You start to notice coincidences, alignments, gentle confirmations. That's when the echo softens, harmony returns, and you realize the miracle was forming all along. Those early signs of alignment, that calm certainty, that effortless flow, are exactly what we'll explore next. When the invisible begins to take shape, it doesn't announce itself with thunder. It comes softly, like a breeze that carries peace instead of doubt. Neville Goddard called this the feeling of certainty, that quiet awareness that something within you has shifted. You can't explain it logically, but you no longer feel the need to. It's as if life suddenly exhaled with you, and everything feels lighter. This calm certainty is the first sign that the law of assumption prayer has taken root. You don't see the full manifestation yet, but the inner tension is gone. Gratitude appears uninvited. You smile for no reason. The desire that once burned with longing now glows with fulfillment. That's the difference between wishing and knowing. One trembles, the other rests. Then come the coincidences. You think of someone, and they call. You overhear a conversation that answers your silent question. You stumble upon a book, a quote, or a video that feels like divine confirmation. Neville referred to these as bridges of incidents, the sequence of natural events that unfold effortlessly once you've assumed the end. These signs aren't random. They are reflections of your new state solidifying in the 3D world. You didn't force them, you allowed them. Because when you feel it real, you stop trying to manipulate reality and start magnetizing it. The right people, opportunities, and resources drift toward you as if carried by an unseen current. That effortless lightness in your heart, that's the hallmark of alignment. You're no longer heavy with wanting. You wake up with quiet expectancy, not impatience. You move through the day with grace, not grasping. You've crossed the line between desire and possession, and now life begins to mirror the inner peace you've chosen to dwell in. It's important to notice this lightness and honor it. Many dismiss it as coincidence or wishful thinking, and in doing so they slip back into doubt. But this feeling is sacred. It's your soul's way of saying it's happening. When you nurture it with gratitude instead of suspicion, it grows stronger, guiding you toward the physical reflection of your assumption. Neville used to say that when you've truly assumed the end, you lose the urge to talk about it. That's because the desire feels done. The inner dialogue quiets. You no longer need to tell others what's coming. You feel it living inside you. That silence is not emptiness. It's fullness contained. It's the consciousness of completion. You might also notice that your reactions begin to change. What used to trigger anxiety now makes you smile. What once felt impossible now seems inevitable. You've stepped into the role of creator, and the world responds differently to you because you're vibrating differently within it. The change is subtle but unmistakable. And here's the beautiful part. The more you trust this new inner calm, the faster your world reflects it. Doubt slows things down, but trust accelerates alignment. Life becomes playful again. You start to see everything as communication from the unseen, guiding you gently toward the fulfillment you already claimed. Eventually, you'll reach a point where signs are no longer needed. The peace itself becomes proof enough. That's when you've moved from faith into embodiment, where prayer ceases to be words and becomes awareness itself. And that deeper embodiment, where silence replaces asking, is exactly where we're going next. When Neville Goddard spoke of true prayer, he wasn't talking about reciting words. He was describing a state of consciousness, a point where words dissolve and only awareness remains. In deep embodiment, you no longer say your prayer. You are your prayer. Your life becomes the living proof of what you once desired. You've crossed from petition into possession. At this level, silence speaks louder than any affirmation. You no longer feel the urge to declare, "It is done," because your being already radiates it. The wish-fulfilled Neville method has become second nature. You don't visualize anymore to convince yourself. You visualize because you enjoy dwelling in what's already true. That's what Neville meant by living in the end. Not performing belief, but resting in it. Think of a singer who's mastered their song. At first, they needed lyrics and concentration, but now the melody lives in them, effortless, flowing, alive. That's embodiment. When your prayer becomes awareness, you no longer perform the ritual, you become the rhythm. Life itself hums with your new frequency, and everything around you harmonizes in response. At this stage, gratitude isn't something you practice, it's who you are. You walk through life with quiet reverence, knowing every moment is the echo of a fulfilled assumption. You stop asking for blessings because you see them everywhere. The divine no longer feels like a distant power. It breathes through you, thinks through you, lives through you. This silence is not emptiness, it's fullness contained. The peace that surpasses understanding that Scripture speaks of, that's what it feels like. It's the sacred stillness of being. You don't need to prove your manifestation, defend your faith, or seek signs. The inner knowing itself becomes the evidence. Neville said, "When you pray, believe that you have received." Notice the tense. have received. Deep embodiment is that continual state of having received. You wake up in it. You breathe in it. Even when challenges arise, you view them through the lens of fulfillment, not lack. That awareness transforms how you see everything, and the outer world can't help but follow. People begin to respond to the energy you carry. Opportunities flow without struggle. Conversations open doors you didn't even knock on. Why? Because your state of consciousness is magnetic, and your new identity calls forth experiences that match its vibration. You've become the answer you once sought. In this state, prayer becomes more like communion than conversation. It's no longer you talking to God, it's God expressing as you. There's no separation left to bridge. The law of assumption prayer has fulfilled its purpose. It brought you home to yourself, the true temple of creation. You realize now that what you once called manifestation was never about attracting things. It was about remembering your authorship. You are not waiting for the miracle. You are the awareness through which the miracle becomes visible. Every breath you take is divine confirmation. And it's in this awareness, this sacred knowing that nothing was ever missing, that the final revelation dawns. The miracle was never the event you were chasing, but the moment you stopped asking and started being. And that's exactly what unfolds next. This is the moment Neville Goddard called the turning point, when you stop treating the divine as something to reach and finally recognize it as your own awareness. The miracle doesn't wait for perfect timing or permission. It happens in the instant you stop asking. Because asking says, I'm not it yet. Being says, I already am. And in the eyes of God, in the infinite imagination, that has always been the truth. Creation is finished. You were never meant to struggle for it. You were meant to awaken to it. The moment you claim it in consciousness, everything begins to align to reflect that assumption. The wish-fulfilled Neville method is not a formula, it's an awakening. You don't get what you want. You become what you've assumed yourself to be. That shift is invisible yet undeniable. One day, you wake up and realize the weight is gone. The prayers that once came from desperation now rise as gratitude. You no longer plead for change. You embody it. You no longer beg for love. You radiate it. You no longer chase abundance. You breathe as it. The miracle was never out there. It was the transformation of your state of being. Neville said that imagination creates reality because imagination is the reality of God within you. When you stop asking and start being, you reunite with that creative power. You discover that heaven isn't a distant reward, but a state of consciousness available now. Every fulfilled desire is simply a reflection of that union, God experiencing himself as you. This is the sacred simplicity of the law of assumption prayer. It's not about long rituals, perfect affirmations, or spiritual effort. It's about a single, quiet decision. I am. And from that decision, all else flows. It's the same truth echoed through ages. Be still and know that I am God. In that stillness, the finished creation reveals itself through you. When you feel it real, you touch eternity in the present moment. The relief, the peace, the calm certainty, those are not side effects. They are the miracle itself. Because what you feel inwardly is what must appear outwardly. Every answered prayer begins as a felt reality long before it shows up in 3D. To live in the end is to trust that what you imagined was already seen and approved by God. You're not waiting for the universe to catch up. The universe is waiting for you to accept what's been done. That's why Neville said, you are already that which you seek. It's not poetry, it's law. And once you live from that truth, life becomes profoundly simple. You stop looking for signs, stop measuring progress, stop doubting your path. You rest. You know, you be. The outer world rearranges effortlessly, not because you demanded it, but because you finally stopped resisting what was always yours. In that moment of surrender, when you stop asking and start being, you meet God where he has always been, within. The miracle isn't granted, it's revealed. It was never about convincing heaven, but about remembering who was speaking all along. And once you remember that, nothing is ever the same again. And now that this journey has brought you here, to the realization that it was always finished, always done, let's gather these truths together in one final reflection, where awareness turns into action and the story becomes your lived experience. So now that you've seen it, can you feel it? That subtle knowing that all this time you weren't waiting for the miracle. The miracle was waiting for you. Neville Goddard's message was never about adding effort or more prayers. It was about remembrance, The moment you stop asking, you declare, I am whole, I am complete, I am already what I sought. And creation, faithful as always, mirrors that back. Ask yourself, how long will you keep rehearsing lack when abundance has already been written in your script? How long will you keep begging for love when you are the expression of it? The moment you dare to feel it real, to assume the end and live in the wish fulfilled, life bends in ways logic can't explain. That's not fantasy, that's law. So tonight, don't pray as someone reaching for heaven. Rest as heaven expressing itself through you. Speak less, feel more. Let your silence become your declaration. Let gratitude replace pleading. Let peace replace worry. This is the law of assumption in its purest form. Prayer not as asking, but as awareness. And remember, you are not learning to manifest. You are learning to remember your authorship. The divine imagination in you has never failed. It only waits for your consent to believe. Stop searching for signs and become the sign. The world will follow. If this message resonated with you, if something within you whispered, "This is the truth I've been waiting to hear," then stay connected. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and keep walking this journey with me, because every video is another step deeper into the power you already hold.